HOA locked me out of my own ranch, so I sued the entire company for criminal trespass. Have you ever had your very livelihood, the land you've poured your heart and soul into, suddenly cut off, isolated by the arbitrary decree of someone else's inflated sense of authority? I'm Marcus Thorne, and my ranch, Sunset Mesa, is more than just property. It's a living legacy, passed down through generations, providing fresh, organic produce to local restaurants and a community-supported agriculture (CSA) program that feeds hundreds of families. Our main access road, a gravel path that's been there for over a century, connects directly to the main county road. It's essential, the lifeline of my operation. Then, Ms. Veronica Sterling arrived. Veronica, the newly elected, self-anointed queen of the sprawling, pristine Canyon Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, saw my working ranch not as a vital community asset, but as an unacceptable rural intrusion. She was all sharp angles and sharper pronouncements, a woman whose perfectly coiffed silver hair and designer activewear screamed unapproachable perfection. Her first official act, it seemed, was to send me a curt, imperious letter demanding I cease and desist using my access road, claiming it was disrupting the serene ambience of Canyon Ridge Estates and lowering property values. Her ultimate, thinly veiled demand was for me to find an alternative access point, effectively forcing me to abandon my historic road. Her tone was dripping with condescension, her words a thinly veiled threat against everything I held dear. She looked at my farm, a testament to hard work and heritage, as if it were a festering wound on the pristine landscape she envisioned. I tried to reason with her, to explain the historical easement, the vital role my farm played in local food supply, and the sheer impracticality of creating a new road through dense, protected woodland. I even provided official county documents, dating back decades, confirming my right-of-way. Veronica merely waved a dismissive hand, her perfectly manicured nails glinting. "Mr. Thorne," she purred, her voice a brittle whisper of disdain, "your quaint little farm simply doesn't align with the elevated standards of Canyon Ridge Estates. We are building a community of distinction, and frankly, your rustic charm detracts from our property values. The bylaws are clear. We control all access points bordering our community." Her words, delivered with an air of unassailable authority, left no room for debate. She was not interested in historical rights. She was interested in control and exclusivity. The true nightmare began on a sweltering Tuesday morning, just as our first harvest of sun-ripened peaches was ready for delivery to the local farmer's market. I drove my truck, laden with fresh fruit, towards my access road, only to find it completely blocked. A massive, ornate wrought iron gate, flanked by imposing stone pillars, stood where my simple gravel path had been. A sign, emblazoned with the Canyon Ridge Estates HOA logo, declared, "Private Road Canyon Ridge Estates Residents Only." My heart pounded with a mix of fury and disbelief. They had fenced me off, cut off my only direct access to the world, effectively trapping my farm. The peaches, perishable and urgently needed, sat in the back of my truck, a stark symbol of Veronica's petty tyranny. As I stared at the imposing gate, a glint of white caught my eye near the base of one of the newly laid stone pillars. It was a discarded, muddy blueprint. It wasn't an HOA document. It was a county plat map, old and faded, but unmistakably clear. It showed my access road not just as a private easement, but as a designated public right-of-way for emergency services, specifically marked for fire and ambulance access to a newly developed, secluded section of Canyon Ridge Estates that had no other direct route. Veronica had not only ignored my historical rights, she had deliberately obstructed a vital public safety corridor. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just about my farm. It was an act of reckless endangerment, threatening the lives of hundreds of residents. And then, a chilling detail. A small, almost invisible notation on the map indicated that a portion of the newly erected fence actually encroached a few feet onto my property, beyond the designated public right-of-way. This wasn't just obstruction, it was criminal trespass. Armed with this irrefutable evidence, I resolved to confront Veronica publicly. I learned she had called an emergency HOA meeting, ostensibly to present the new security measures. I now realized with a surge of cold fury that included my illegally blocked road. I arrived at the meeting, the plat map and my own property deed clutched in my hand, just as Veronica, radiating an almost unbearable smugness, began her presentation, complete with glossy photos of the imposing new gate. I waited for a lull, then stood up, my voice steady despite the tremor in my hands. Veronica, I stated, holding up the plat map, I believe this document sheds a rather inconvenient light on your security measures. Her eyes, which had been sparkling with self-satisfaction, immediately narrowed. She quickly recovered, her voice sharp. Mr. Thorne, I have no idea what you're talking about. This is a private HOA matter. You are disrupting our proceedings. She attempted to rally the other HOA members, painting me as a disgruntled, eccentric farmer, a nuisance to their refined community. As you can see, ladies and gentlemen, this is precisely the kind of element we are trying to remove from our beautiful canyon ridge. But just as she was about to call for me to be removed, a quiet, unassuming man named Mr. Davies, a retired city planning official who lived in Canyon Ridge Estates and often bought produce from my farm, rose from his seat. Actually, Miss Sterling, Mr. Davies interjected, his voice calm but authoritative. Mr. Thorne raises a very serious point. That access road isn't just his private easement. It's a designated emergency services right-of-way for the entire North Ridge section of Canyon Ridge. Blocking it is a felony. He then pulled out his own, more recent, official city planning document, which clearly showed the emergency access route. The room fell silent. A collective gasp rippled through the air. Before Veronica could even stammer a denial, the doors to the community hall swung open. Two stern-faced individuals from the county planning department, accompanied by a local sheriff's deputy, walked in. They had been tipped off by Mr. Davies, who had grown suspicious when the new gate appeared. Veronica Sterling, one of the planning officials, announced, his voice devoid of emotion. You are in violation of multiple county ordinances. The construction of this gate obstructs a public right-of-way and constitutes criminal trespass on Mr. Thorne's property. We also have reports of forged documents submitted to the county for this project. Veronica's face, which had been a mask of carefully constructed composure, crumbled into a terrified, pale mess. Her jaw went slack, her eyes darting wildly around the room, searching for an escape that wasn't there. She stammered, then erupted into a desperate, high-pitched shriek, blaming misunderstandings, overzealous contractors, and a misunderstanding of the paperwork. It was the pathetic wail of a tyrant whose kingdom had suddenly collapsed. Then, a surprising voice emerged from the crowd. Mr. Peterson, a long-standing, quiet member of the HOA board and a respected local civil engineer, stood up, his face etched with regret. "And Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice trembling slightly, "perhaps you'd also like to explain why you pushed so hard for this gate project, not for the community's security, but because your husband's construction company, Elite Builds, stood to gain millions from the new section of Canyon Ridge, and you were promised a substantial personal consulting fee from the deal, all by ensuring privacy from the undesirable elements of the county road?" The revelation hung in the air, a final, poisoned arrow. Veronica had been exploiting the HOA not for the community's benefit, but for her own illicit financial gain and her husband's profit. The fallout was swift and brutal. Veronica was immediately stripped of her HOA presidency, her reign ending in public humiliation and a perp walk captured by local news. The county planning department launched a full-scale investigation, leading to severe fines and criminal charges for obstruction of a public right-of-way, trespass, and fraud. The HOA members, horrified by her deception and the legal exposure she had brought upon them, voted unanimously to sue her personally for misuse of funds and damages to the community's reputation. Her carefully cultivated social circle, once so eager to bask in her reflected glory, publicly disavowed her, fearing association with a pariah. Elite Builds, facing legal repercussions and public outrage, immediately lost their lucrative contracts and faced a barrage of investigations, leaving Veronica utterly isolated and financially ruined. She lost her position, her reputation, her social standing, and faced a future of crushing debt and legal battles. Her karma was a public, humiliating spectacle, a direct consequence of her petty tyranny and audacious fraud. I felt a profound sense of vindication, a quiet triumph that justice, however painfully achieved, had prevailed. The county immediately ordered the removal of the illegal gate and pillars, and my access road was restored. I didn't just stop there. With the irrefutable evidence of criminal trespass and obstruction of a public right-of-way, I filed a massive lawsuit not just against Veronica, but against the entire Canyon Ridge Estates HOA as a corporate entity for criminal trespass, negligence, and knowingly allowing the obstruction of an emergency access point. The lawsuit, widely publicized, sent shockwaves through the entire region's HOA community. The Canyon Ridge HOA, facing ruinous legal fees and the very real threat of dissolution, settled quickly, paying a substantial sum in damages and legal fees, and issuing a public apology. My farm continued to thrive, its deliveries uninterrupted, and the community, shaken but united, began the process of rebuilding trust and respecting the delicate balance of property rights and public safety. In a world where bureaucratic power can become a weapon and individual ego can endanger an entire community, where do we draw the line between upholding rules and protecting lives and livelihoods? When faced with such blatant disregard for rights and safety, what would you have done?